Hey Eric. Hey Greg.
Hello, how are you?
Hmm. I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful. Can't complain.
All right, I'm spilling coffee all over now.
Do we got a lot of people on?
We've got a couple. I will probably wait like 2 more minutes before I get started here.
Okay,
But thanks for taking time out of your morning to hop on.
no worries. I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's always
Lots of good details.
exactly. And I mean, there's only one way to become the market expert, and that's by, learning about the market. So
Exactly.
if only I knew that the first couple years I was in real estate. No.
Well, everything is, we learn from our mistakes, right?
Absolutely, that's for sure.
And I've been learning a lot.
hmm Yeah, no, this business will definitely teach you your mistakes quickly.
Yes.
All right, I see we got another person on, so we'll wait probably about 1 more minute and then I'll go ahead and get started. All right, guys, we are going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. First off, as usual, thanks for hopping on here today and trying to be the market expert. All right, we're going to come here. So we're going to dive in. I'll just go ahead and get started. We're going to dive in first to this article that I always go back to by Logan. So this week he kind of takes a little bit of a turn. So he says, "Is housing inventory about to turn negative year over year?" Essentially, what in the summary of the article, what he's saying is that the market shifted mid 2025, since mid June 2025, and we're seeing slowing inventory growth. With that being said, what we all are also seeing is that they're obviously the sellers that have the lower rates, less than 6%, they're really not probably looking to get out unless if they have to. So they're kind of watching those rates too. What we are also, what this article, this paragraph is also saying is that a strong 2025 inventory is what creates the tough year over year comp. So, while we're trying to stay above year over year from last year, they had some strong inventory, and what we're seeing is we're starting to kind of round out and curve into that year over year where there's less of a growth. Um, we're also even seeing some markets that already have negative year over year inventory. And then the national inventory is likely heading towards negative year over year as supply tightens as well. So let's go ahead and dive into housing inventory. So essentially, what we're seeing here in the housing inventory, kind of like what I was saying, is instead of going up like consistently up, how consistent growth, we're actually seeing it kind of level off and even off. So the inventory is rising seasonally, but the growth is slowing sharply. The year over year growth did drop pretty big. It went from 33% to 3.21%. So we are getting near that negative year over year territory. Again, as we're seeing that though, we are still seeing the weekly inventory increasing from 723 to 724, but the rate that it's increasing is definitely slower. Essentially, kind of what we're looking at here. Again, I think the lower mortgage rates under the 6% are limiting the new supply. We're not seeing the sellers sell just because they want to. It's more so that they have to because they don't want to get out of those rates. We're also seeing that the market is running into a strong year-over-year comparisons. Again, that's kind of what we're seeing here as we're leveling off. We're going to be running into 2025 that is consistently growing. And I would say, like what we are seeing is the inventory is healthier than COVID years, but we're tightening compared to last year. So, um, what I would say, don't assume that the inventory is going to keep expanding. Obviously, again, with just where rates are, sellers have to be motivated to sell. And they do remain valuable when you do get your hands on a listing. So I think there's a big piece of conversation there about pricing right, which I'll talk about further down the road as well. But pricing right is huge right now. So prepare. I mean, again, with that pricing, prepare for more of a competitive market, more negotiations, things like that. So while we're still seeing inventory is rising, the growth is slowing and the supply is tightening. So as we dive down into the new listings, what we're seeing here is that they are underperforming from year over year or last year expectations. The recent week did come in lower year over year, so 70,000 instead of 76,000. So we're not hitting that normal peak season range of about 80K to 100K new listings that we would like to see. Again, I think that's due to the sellers being hesitant to enter the market. They don't want to get rid of their lower interest rates, um, which just makes listings more valuable, as I keep mentioning. So, with this kind of graph here again, there are limited new listings, but I do think that that opens up the value of if you go into your listing appointment and you set the tone right away, you set the standard of, hey, we do not want to chase this market. We need to price right. We need to price aggressively. That'll be, a win for everybody. Um, as we move down to price cuts, so again, typical reminder for price cuts, we typically see about 1/3 of all homes undergo a price reduction at some point. The current rate as of right now is 34.30, which is slightly down from the 35% that we saw. And it's slightly obviously over than the 33.33%. So when price cuts rise is when typically we'll see rates and inventory increase. Um, Essentially, if we look down at this graph here, what we're seeing is the price reductions are normal market behavior. They're not really a red flag, but they are slower than last year if we kind of look at that compared to 2025, which is the maroon line here. Um, so again, I think this is just a big thing. Set the seller expectations early around potential price adjustments. If they're adamant that they want to set a price that you think might be higher than what the market is saying, have that conversation early. Say, hey, we don't want to chase the market, so we do need to discuss some next steps as far as price reduction so that we're staying ahead of the game. And again, use those price reductions as a strategy. It's not a failure. Again, if your seller's adamant that they want to sell, it's we want to make our sellers happy, but we also have to make sure that they understand real world and where the market currently is. So again, price cuts aren't a problem. They're just part of how the market finds the right price. We'll skip over here, skip past the mortgage spreads, and we'll move to weekly pending sales. So what we're seeing in weekly pending sales is, again, we are kind of down week to week and year over year. Um, some of it could be due to the Easter weekend, but currently 2026 we were at 68,864. Last year we were at 71,632. So again, slight decrease there. Um, I do, think the higher rates are slowing the demand again. The demand is obviously sensitive to the rate threshold. So, as we see those kind of fluctuate and under 6.25, we're not going to see a whole lot of sellers looking to get out of there really quickly. Um, so if we bring it down to this graph here again, we kind of dipped last week. I think we were right around just above, I believe, if I recall correctly. This week we are definitely lower year over year, week over week. Again, this is 1 week, so don't overreact to 1 week. We'll focus on the overall trends. We'll see where this goes next week and the week after, and go from there. But the demand isn't gone. I think it's just reacting to the rates. As we get down to the mortgage purchase application data, and again, just a reminder, this is everybody who has put in a application for a mortgage. Um, and so what we're seeing here is we are seeing a positive 1% week to week growth, but a 7% negative year over year growth or decrease. So it is mixed weekly trends kind of that we're seeing, some up, some down, some flat. Now, again, obviously, in this specific instance, what they're looking for is 12 to 14 weeks of positive week to week. So majority of 2026, we're seeing the positive, but it's starting to slow a little bit as we look down here. So this is kind of a forward-looking indicator. Typically, you're not gonna these statistics, this data, we'll see the results 30 to 90 days down the road because this is mortgage applications, not people that are actually currently looking. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, higher rates are going to affect this, but not drastically. Um, so what I would say is use this data to kind of anticipate the future activity, but not necessarily obviously current closings. Just kind of something to keep an eye on and watch where it goes in the next weeks to come. Again, this is something that's taken 12 to 14 weeks as a group is what they're looking for positive. Um, so that's all I got for this article here. Now we're going to move to another interesting one. Now, this one was created by Redfin, by Lily Katz and Yinki Zhu. I don't think I pronounced that right. But essentially, this is just another view on the price cuts. So what this article is essentially saying is that 34.2% of sellers are cutting prices right now. Again, national average, kind of what we look for is 33.3%. Now, with that being said, the average price cut is for $41,000 or about 7.3%. So that's a pretty big cut. The active inventory is rising, but the new listings did recently drop, obviously. And then mortgage rates dipped, but not enough to really fully boost the demand. What we are seeing with the median list price is there is a 2% one decrease year over year, with 24 straight weeks of flat or declining growth. So what we're kind of looking at here, what this kind of means is that the buyers are, potentially starting to gain some leverage, and the sellers are still adjusting from overpricing during the pandemic era peaks when everybody was, putting in their offers, waiving appraisal, waiving inspections, signing up for their firstborn child, whatever it might have been. I mean, it was obviously a crazy time. So the demand exists, but the buyers are definitely more cautious and selective. Um, and I think that's what we see. The market's not necessarily, it's definitely not crashing. It's just flattening, evening out. Like I said earlier, more negotiations that we're going to be seeing and, just more work and more tools to add to our hat. So, again, I think the big piece of this, I don't want to dive super deep into this one, but I think the big takeaways of this one is, again, pricing right from day one is critical. You don't want to make that mistake because if you make the mistake of overpricing and you're chasing the market, I mean, heck, you could show your sellers this stat here that those people are, lowering it by 41,000 on average. Um, so also we want to kind of expect more negotiations, longer decision times, just going back and forth with the buyers and the sellers and trying to meet in the middle to make everyone as happy as possible. Um, the spring does still provide a timing advantage. Obviously, the spring is where it does pick up a little bit, so we'll see what that looks like for sellers. But we definitely, again, want to be extra strategic with the sellers who bought in the last 2 to 3 years. They're going to have rates they don't want to leave. And there's a chance that they might have overpaid if they were one of those people who waived everything. So what I would say, this market definitely rewards accurate pricing, and then punishes guessing. So just do your due diligence, do your work, sit down with your clients and really make sure that they understand the data as well. All right, we'll move to this Inman one. Now, this is the hottest and coldest housing markets of 2026 ranked. I wish I could show you this article, but I wasted all my time letting it sit here, and I have not paid for Inman yet. So I'm going to discuss this, but I unfortunately don't really have an article to follow along with this one. But essentially, what we were seeing with this article here is what it was saying is there's no, while we can have all these statistics for all these different markets, there's no real national market. Real estate is definitely hyper local. And I mean, that's as easy as you look at us. You could try to compare us to certain parts of Texas or wherever you want to compare us to, but we're always going to be slightly different. There might be some comparable markets, but it definitely is hyper local. And what we are seeing in this article specifically, what it's seeing is that market conditions are splitting. They're not moving together. For instance, in the Northeast and the low inventory markets, those are staying competitive. But when you look at the Sun Belt and the Mountain West, we're cooling after our rapid growth. So buyers are still active, but again, depending where you're at, they're definitely more price and payment sensitive. Um, I would say the biggest thing, inventory is probably the main driver of the market strength. Um, while some areas, we are still seeing fast sales and strong demand, others are seeing longer days on the market, price cuts, softer activity. And I think that's kind of the two sides of it that we're seeing right now. You have, the people that are pricing competitively and strategically that did their homework and those homes are flying off. And if you're underpriced, the market's going to bring you back up. You're going to get those offers that will eventually bring you up. So just keep that in mind. But then you also, on the other side of things, you have the people that are overpricing, the sellers that don't want to lose any money, that might have overpaid and they need this certain amount. And you're seeing those people consistently drop as well and stay on the market. So I would say that's kind of the two things we're seeing right now. Um, the market has shifted back to a more balanced and normalized environment. Again, I wish I had this article to show a little more, but what I wanted to take away from it is know your local market. You could read all these articles on the national market and what's going on the national level, but you also want to be educated and knowledgeable about your local market so that you can have these conversations at a local in a local piece with your clients. Again, pricing strategy is critical. The right price sells, the wrong price sits. I was just discussing. Expect again more negotiations, inspections, appraisal, sensitivity. I mean, for instance, we have a condo that we have listed. We're getting to the closing table, but we had issues with the appraisal, and this was one of those people that purchased overpriced or overpaid for this property back in the height of COVID and he's feeling it now. So I think just having those conversations before you list when you first are talking to these people, and plus it's going to look like you're educated and you're on top of your game. Um, so just keep that in mind. And then obviously guide your clients through a market that requires more strategy than speed. Again, just all about the data, the knowledge. We want to have these conversations with our clients first. We don't want to have to try to put a fire out and then they say, "Oh, well, you didn't tell me this could be something we had to worry about, blah, 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 blah," whatever it might be, because it always falls back onto us as agents. So when we can look like we're on top of our game and we can look like we know what we're talking about, it is huge and it'll go a long way for our clients. So, all right, moving on from this one. So the next one I wanted to bring up is kind of an interesting conversation. So this is from the Real Estate Almanac. Now, what it is essentially is the T360 report, and it's basically the yearly report that comes out with the top brokerages and lists them, and then you always see, the competitors, Compass that will say, "Oh, we're number one," or you'll have Redfin, "Oh, we're number one," whoever it might be. Everybody always finds a way to take the stats and put themselves as number one. What I wanted to show, so this is the top 10 brokerages. And when we look down here, we're not going to see Keller Williams here. The reason why, and that's part of the data that the Compass and EXP, when they come and say, "Oh, look at us, we're number one," they're using this, the top 10 brokerages data. And the fact of the matter is, Keller Williams is actually considered an enterprise or is listed in the enterprise or franchises, basically. So when you come over to the top 20 franchises, you're going to see Keller Williams right there at the top. So essentially, the way to think about that, obviously, this is kind of just if you ever see that, or if you ever have a client that mentions, "Oh, well, I saw that Keller Williams was not on top," you can have these conversations with them. top brokerages is obviously the individual companies and offices by sales volume, things like that. And again, like I said, we don't appear on that list because we operate as a franchise model, which is why we show up on the top enterprises. And when you look at this and based off our statistics, we we tend to rank north towards the top of by sales volume, agent count, and transactions. So again, I think that conversation, if you ever get into that conversation, it's going to be around like, you're not comparing apples to apples, you're comparing two different things. And again, I think it's also you can really read data to make it sound and twist it any way you want, depending on what your look is or what you're trying to show. So KW isn't missing anywhere. It's just categorized differently. If you've ever ran into that conversation, now you know it's in the enterprises or the franchises. It's not in the top 10 brokerages. Again, this is a report that comes out once a year by T360. And so you can access that just by searching T360 on Google or T360 top brokerages, whatever it might be. But again, I think this is kind of nice to know because if you don't have the understanding of this data, you don't necessarily understand the difference. You could misinterpret the market share and power. Um, and you want to make sure, again, you want to just make sure you have this knowledge in your back pocket in case it ever comes up. So not a big, I don't want to spend a big piece on this, but this is a big report that comes out once a year. And obviously, there's always people that are like, oh, I saw it was Compass on the top, or oh, I saw it was Redfin, or whatever, whoever it might be. So, all right, guys, I got one more article here and then a couple little pieces at the end there. So, what we're going to dive into with this article, this is what 10 years of housing data reveals about the 2026 market and the signals to watch. So, what we're looking at essentially is the housing cycles do follow a pattern. And that pattern essentially is that the demand is going to build, which then the sellers are going to push the prices up, but then the buyers are going to push back eventually. It's going to get to a point where the sellers can't push up anymore, and the buyers push back eventually and keep pushing back and keep pushing back until the market resets. So right now, like I said, like I said earlier, we're kind of seeing about one third of listings cutting prices. Um, and we're seeing, like I said, homes selling at two different speeds. So you have again the ones that are selling that are priced competitively, priced strategically. You're going to see those ones fall off the market pretty quickly or go under contract pretty quickly. And then you're going to see everybody else that's chasing that price too high and now they're just trying to catch up. The other thing we're seeing right now is that withdrawals are rising at about 22% activity. So that's just something to keep in mind is the withdrawal activity there. Again, this is not a crash, it's a negotiation market. Um, so it's just going to be the big keys are going to be, around those conversations that you have with your sellers and your buyers as well. But sellers more specifically. Um, you want to watch your behavior or watch the behavior of the market, not just the prices. And then obviously, when you're going through and you're getting maybe you have a listing and you're trying to figure out where you actually fall price wise. You want to identify what's overpriced versus what's well listed, kind of look at those and use those as your comps. But you'll be able to see the ones that are clearly overpriced and you'll be able to also see where they started, where they're going, and probably have a good idea of where they're going to end too. So, um, overall, I would say, I mean, if we're taking all four of these in a big picture, while the inventory growth is slowing, the supply is also tightening. I think the sellers, like I said, they're adjusting. They're coming down now. They're starting to realize that their homes may not be worth what they thought they were. Um, but it does create pricing pressure. And then the buyers are still active, but they're selective. They're not just any buyers out there looking for anything. It's buyers that have to move that, regardless of the rates, they have to move. So and they are getting more negotiating power in the process as well. Um, the market isn't about speed, it is about precision. So just keep that in mind. And I think honestly, the agents that are going to win in today's market are going to be the ones that understand the local market shifts. They're going to be with the ones that price correctly from day one, meaning having those potentially tough conversations with your clients. We're also going to need the winning agent's going to need to educate our clients on the reality versus the expectations because I think especially sellers or current sellers that may have purchased back at the height of COVID or 2 to 3 years, 4 years ago. Um, they've got some unreasonable expectations considering they went through that market when they purchased. So again, it's just the education and those conversations. And I do think that if you keep trying to be the market on these, you'll adapt faster than the market, and we'll just keep ahead of everything and stay on top. So the last couple pieces I did want to go over, just a couple minutes here is the mortgage rates that I always like to go over. So if we look over the last week, we did see a slight increase in the conforming. So it went up from, where were we? I think we were 6.560. And it started to drop a little bit, dipped a little bit, but now it's coming back up. And then what we are seeing with the FHA is it is dipping a little bit as of right now, but we'll see where that goes in the next couple of days also. So last piece, I wanted to bring it to a local piece, local market conversation here. So if we go back to the Be the Market Expert from last week, if we look at new listings, so new listings last week was 1,476, and right now this week we're at 1,835. So we are still seeing positive week over week growth for the new listings. The coming soon was a decrease. We're at 288 right now. Last week we were at 378. So we are seeing about a 90 home decrease week over week on coming soon. Back on market is 297. There's really no change from last week. Last week was 291. Same with price increase. It went from 128 or went from 121 to 128. Price decrease, we did have an increase on that. So instead of 1,459, this last week we had 1,885. So we are seeing exactly, we were talking about that one side of it where if you're priced high, you're going to have to start decreasing your price, and we're seeing that. Pending is 1,444. Last week was 1,366. So we do have an increase in pendings. And then closed, we have 1,061. Last week was 1,336. Again, with that, that is a decrease there. But if you kind of think about it, you have the closed here and maybe the plus back on market 297, and that puts us roughly right around the total close from last week. So there is some, common or, logical sense there, I guess, as far as you have the close and then the ones that didn't close that went back on the market or things like that. So ultimately, that's what I have for you guys this week. I really appreciate you taking time out of your Tuesday morning. And is there any questions on anything I went over? Anything anybody wants to say about anything?
Thank you for your time, Chris.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you,
Appreciate
Gray.
all the info.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you all hopping on, and hopefully we'll see you guys next week. Keep taking control of that market though, okay?
All right, take it easy.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. Thank you.